Joel Klatt, the voice of college football for Fox Sports. He'll be on the Bama-Texas game. It is great to see you.
Is up. How you doing?
I am doing
It's
great.
been a while.
You
Here
look
we
fantastic.
go. You look great. You look great. And clearly thinking very highly of yourself. No amendments. None whatsoever. I love it.
Okay. So J-Mac and I were talking about this yesterday. If you take out quarterbacks, and they get drafted because they're quarterbacks, Will Anderson, the rush end for Alabama, is it's very much the Chase Young thing. That's the best player in college football,
Yeah.
I think. He just plays a slightly less important position than quarterback. Texas has a freshman tackle, and I think the game comes down to, at some point, can Texas literally give a quarterback, whoever it is, any time to throw? Am I simplifying it?
No, I don't think you're simplifying it at all. It's not just a freshman tackle. They have another true freshman that's starting at guard. They have 7 true freshmen in the 2-deep. There's only 5 other guys in the 2-deep that aren't true freshmen. Think about how young that is. Now, you can spin that if you're a Texas fan and say, boy, we recruited great, and they certainly did up at the offensive line, and they've needed to. Because remember, Texas hasn't had an offensive player drafted in the first round since Vince Young.
Oh, my word.
Think about that.
Wow.
So they have to rebuild drastically and do it in the fashion of front to back, offensively and defensively, and they feel like they did that in this last class. That's what Sark talked to me about all offseason. Hey, these linemen are really good. They might not be dominant early, but they're very good. The problem with it is that they're going to face a front 7 in Alabama that's the best in college football.
Absolutely.
Will Anderson is the best player outside of quarterback in college football. He's got this rare combination of elite ability and elite effort. It almost never happens, and when you get that, it's like the collision. It's like a supernova, and you turn into the best player out there. And I think that there's a chance that Alabama may have the top 2 draft picks in the draft with Bryce and Will Anderson.
Yeah.
So
Also,
it'll be interesting. But to your point about the game plan, Sark's going to have to basically be a 6th offensive lineman with his play calling. So everything's going to have to be, not everything, but generally speaking, Texas is going to have to do everything they can to minimize the impact of their own offensive line. Think screen, think getting the quarterback outside of the pocket, think misdirection, think jet sweep, toss sweep, all the different things that you can do, RPO, play action, that takes the pressure off of the offensive line. That's where they're going to have to live this week against Bama.
By the way, Nick Saban's second year at Alabama, he got housed by Utah. I don't see this as a winnable game. I think if it ended up 38-23 and it was fun, you'd be like, guys, all you guys are back next year. I'd feel the quarterbacks are young.
Yeah, yours.
Yeah, I mean, to me,
It's an interesting point. Well, there's two schools of thought here. One is what you're talking about, and I think that the Texas fan base, to be honest, would be happy with a cover. What is it right now, 20? I think it's 20, which is a huge line. Think of it this way. Texas is a bigger dog at home than App State is at Texas A&M. I mean, that's just to give you a sense of how highly we think of Alabama. Now, I think that the fan base at Texas would be happy with a cover and a team that Bama had to beat rather than beat themselves, because they've sat through too much sloppy play over the last few years. Penalties, turnovers, defensive meltdowns in the second half, and I think that they would be happy with that. On the other hand, there's another school of thought to this, which is Alabama is the mirror of college football right now. Them and Georgia are the mirror. Right? Not just a measuring stick. They will reflect back to you exactly how far away you are.
That's great.
From the mountaintop. And there's no getting away from that. Just like you and I look in the mirror every day, you're a little more gray every single day, right? That mirror ain't lying to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you look good. You look fine. You look at you're in shape, but that mirror ain't lying to you. And Bama is not going to lie to Texas. And that truth could be hard to accept. So there's two schools of thought about the expectation of what's going to happen there on Saturday for the Longhorns.
Okay. So last Friday, knowing I was going to the USC game, I scribbled down some schematic notes for Lincoln Riley.
Okay,
I was
great.
trying to get those notes to him right before kickoff. Security is always a pain in my butt.
That's right.
So I could
well,
not.
And the Coliseum security, I mean, they're tight.
So these schematic, I would say suggestions.
Okay. Yeah.
I couldn't get him. Nonetheless, they looked very well schooled. So my takeaway going to the game was,
even though they didn't get your brilliance, they still looked good. Remarkable.
I've scribbled a few more for Stanford. Can't use the same ones back-to-back weeks. But my takeaway on this was they have figured out it takes you 2 years, even with the transfer portal. Nick Saban got Alabama's defense good really quick.
Yep.
Took him about 2 years to get the offense figured out. I watched USC offensively, and I'm like, all right, they're not there. They're not close defensively. They got the offense figured out.
Sure.
That is a top 5 offense in college football.
And remember, that is not all that dissimilar to what OU was under Lincoln Riley. He's not going to be sitting there like, oh man, how do I win this way? He's been doing it for years. Right? I mean, Oklahoma's defense was not good. That's why he brought in Alex Grinch, and they got a little bit better over the last couple of years. But think about that, the Kyler Murray team, the Jalen Hurts team, the Baker Mayfield team. They went out there. Remember the Rose Bowl against Georgia, the overtime game? I mean, they could not play defense out of a wet paper bag. So he's somewhat used to this, and I don't think that it's going to fluster him. I think it was a good debut. And I think it told me everything that I needed to know about what I saw from the skill position. They're elite. They're at the top end of college football. They're one of the top 5 offenses in college football. I agree with you on that. From a fan standpoint, what this week against Stanford does, I think it presents a little bit of a pause. If they go out there and get pushed around physically, and if they end up playing a really tight game against a team that we don't think much of in Stanford, right? A good coach, but I don't know what their roster is. And if, let's say they even lose, it's the biggest fear for a USC fan because it's like, I knew it. It was lipstick on a pig. And they'll be 3 years away. And then you're going to be figuring out how in the world do we get the defense better? How do you play good defense? You know, and then they'll start looking at the Utah blueprint and so on and so forth. I don't think that that's the case. I think that they're elite enough on offense and they do enough on the defensive side because they've got some skill on defense, not a ton of toughness.
That's right.
They're weak at linebacker, I think, in general. But, Colin, I think that they go out there to prove a message. I think Lincoln's on a mission.
For recruiting, too.
For recruiting especially.
Do not take the foot off the gas.
Stay here. You don't have to go to the SEC. You don't have to leave. All these recruits, the Bowers of the world, the CJ Strouds of the world, you don't have to leave. The Bryce Youngs of the world. They left the footprint, and this is a moment where Lincoln Riley is going to try to start putting up those fences around the West Coast and say, elite players will stay here and play for the Trojans.
Still got to get those notes to him. So, listen, I can like Ohio.
I can't. You got to tell me some of these notes. I mean,
got people in
what
multiple
are they?
Sets, personnel moves.
Lincoln.
Bubble screens.
Second and short. Think. Hold on. Wait for it. Play action.
Don't give the stuff away on national television.
Oh, was that? Oh, that was one of them. I was being facetious.
All right. So I watched Clemson. Their offense isn't good enough to score against Bama and Georgia. They're out.
Wow.
I watched. They're good. They're out.
I totally disagree.
Well, let's get to this show's called The Herd, not The Klatt. Let me drive this topic. Okay. So I watched Ohio State.
That was good.
I watched Ohio State. Good. I think you can push them around. I thought Notre Dame pushed them around for 2.5 quarters. I saw Utah push them around. I saw Oregon, Michigan. Ohio State's good. There's something off. They're not as physical as I want.
Oh, I totally disagree. In fact, I thought that they proved the exact opposite point, that they could win ugly and that they could win physical. Do you know how difficult it is with a lead to go out there and have a 7-minute fourth quarter drive that goes 95 yards and score a touchdown when they know you have to run, and you still run? Like that drive proved you wrong. I don't think that they got pushed around. They played much better defense under Jim Knowles. And while it wasn't flashy, I think if you really asked Ryan Day, is the style of that win over Notre Dame going to help you more in the long run than going out there and beating them 45-35? You'd say absolutely. Absolutely. I think the Jackson Smith and Jigba injury during the game kind of rattled them from a passing game perspective. 7 minutes, 95 yards, 14 plays.
No, Georgia scores a lot faster than that. Alabama didn't.
I just totally disagree. I think that the entire question, you're right about the question, by the way, was are they tough? Are they physical? But that game to me was an answer to that. It was in the affirmative that, yes, we are. Man, I don't know. Did you watch?
Yes.
Okay.
Listen, my takeaway was they were flummoxed for a half.
You think they were pushed around?
I thought they were flummoxed for a half.
Flummoxed.
You have the best receiving core in the country. You have the second or first best quarterback. You have a brilliant offensive coach. You're sputtering around.
You don't think Notre Dame's defense is really good? I think that they're very good. Remember, they got the All-American transfer safety from Northwestern, Brendan Joseph.
Oh, transfer safety. All right.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, now, here's something else. I like Brian Kelly, but boy, the Wolves are out.
He's the butt of every joke.
The media's after him.
Did you see it got told, like, hey, we'll be on time when you win? I was like, yikes.
Here's the thing. It was the way they lost. They got a kick blocked. I mean, the special teams were a disaster. I'm watching the first half offensively. You got the quarterback. I like Jaden Daniels. I really do. He can move a little. I liked him at Arizona State. He's got better players.
I mean, Keyshawn Butte might disagree with you, but that's fine.
So they got players on social.
Eye of the beholder, huh, J-Mac? Right?
They got the social media. Like, they have players literally, like, erasing LSU off social media. It's like, whoa. It's a game. It's Florida State. It is. Are we overreacting here? Did you see anything you liked?
There wasn't a lot that I liked. And the problem that LSU has right now is that in recruiting, perception is reality. And in this day and age, in our culture, in particular with young people, perception changes immediately with social media. And when you become the butt of the social media joke, that is a bad spot to be.
Yeah,
that's what Brian Kelly has gone into. I agree with you. Brian's a heck of a coach.
He's won everywhere.
He's a hell of a football coach. But now he's trending into this spot where it's all right for somebody in the media to chirp him at his own press conference.
I couldn't believe that.
And it's like, he knows he can't go strangle the person. He wants to. Probably wind up with a felony count. But, I mean, like, his blood was just boiling at that point. And you've got Keyshawn Butte, who's deleting LSU stuff on Twitter. They've got to defend him. He's got to go out there in a presser and say, like, our kids love playing for LSU. Really? They just deleted all of LSU off of their Instagram or whatever it is. They are in dangerous territory right now where the perception is that they're a bigger joke than they are a contender. And that's a problem. You know, it did not help. Think of it this way. Okay, two different ways to leave. Two guys that were absolutely vilified last year when they left. Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly. Okay, and they went for money, and we get it from a monetary standpoint. Lincoln Riley, for the most part, has tried to lay low.
Yeah.
After becoming a villain. Lay low, go to work, get the transfers all behind the scenes. He wasn't dancing around with Caleb Williams once on social media.
He didn't do a fake LA accent.
He didn't walk out with a surfboard and his hat backwards, to a basketball game, and everyone's like, "What are you doing? Like, you're from the plains of Texas, dude. Like, you went to Texas Tech." Whereas Brian Kelly rolled down there and,
"How y'all doing?"
I thought he was going to be like, "You all want some gumbo?" And it was like, yikes. Likability is a big issue in college football, and in particular in recruiting. And these two guys who were villains when they left, one tried to take the underground route, and I think that's what has helped Lincoln Riley get away from that villain mode, whereas Brian Kelly's still the butt of the joke, and that's a problem for LSU.
We've mostly agreed. I thought Ohio State sputtered a little too much.
I think you're wrong. Right. Yeah, I'm kind of like, how Bama's the mirror for Texas?
Yeah.
I'm the mirror for you in college football. You get to see exactly where you fall short every Wednesday. It's amazing.
All right, so I'm going to keep you on for one more question, despite that dig, which felt personal. Okay, so I try to tell people this all the time. This is where I don't have a loyalty in sports. People come up to me all the time, "What's your favorite team?" And I'm like, I'm a chef. I want good produce. I just want good stuff.
And you're saying pro sports?
College or pro?
You wouldn't say you're a USC honky right now?
Slight lean into USC. Very subtle. Few can see it.
Very slight.
But the point is, Klatt, I do like more good games.
Yep.
So when I hear about the 12-team playoff, my takeaway is early in the season, more teams are going to do a Texas and Bama and say, we can lose 2 games. Okay, we can
especially at the top. Yep.
Okay, because I think September's always been the weakness of the sport when it should be the strength, because the NFL doesn't get going until week 2. And then at the end of the season, we're not going to worry about talking about the SEC. We're going to talk about the tournament. When you watch March Madness, nobody talks about the Big 12.
Yeah.
They don't talk about the ACC. They talk about the teams.
Yeah.
And I think college has gotten too regionalized and too much about the SEC. I just want to talk about the tournament.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Quickly, here's a couple of problems that I think that the 4-team playoff has been highly detrimental to the sport. It's really consolidated all the talent into just a few places. In fact, if you look at since 2014 when this playoff came to pass, where the 5-star recruits have gone, they've all gone to the only schools that have won national championships. Bama 40, Georgia's had 36, Clemson and Ohio State each in the 20s, 22, 26, LSU 20 right there. Those are the only 5 teams that have won national championships. Nobody else is even close to that. So the consolidation of talent is not great for the sport. Right? It's a lot like baseball. Your baseball analogy, the rich are getting way too rich in college football and leaving everybody else behind. So the only way to change that is to allow or expand the definition of success to what it used to be. See, it used to be you could go to a bowl game, and a New Year's Day bowl game was a big deal. It was like, hey, we're successful.
Fiesta Bowl, good year.
Bowl. I've talked to Barry Alvarez about this. The way that he brought Wisconsin up and brought them to be a Big Ten power is not available anymore, because it used to be you could be successful if you were competing for a chance to go to the Rose Bowl. That's no longer the case. Ohio State went to the Rose Bowl last year. It was a failure of a year. Why? They weren't in the playoff.
That's a good point.
So the expansion is going to allow more teams to define themselves as successful. Couple of stats here, and you're going to love these. There's only 13 teams that have been to a college football playoff. Only 13. That's 10% of the sport. That's not enough over 8 years. If this 12-team playoff would have been adopted 8 years ago, 41 teams would have made playoff appearances.
Of 130.
That's
almost getting up to 40%.
Yeah. That is a third of college football. By the way, some of these teams that would have been in there, the 28 that didn't make berths, that would have made berths, you've got teams like Texas A&M, Coastal Carolina, Western Michigan, University of Colorado, Penn State would have made 4, Wisconsin would have made 3. That's how you are changing the paradigm in the sport and allowing those teams to go and recruit on more of a level playing field with the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Clemsons and the Ohio States of the world. The only way that we're going to disperse some of this talent at the top end of college football is if we allow these schools the opportunity to compete at the highest level and define themselves as successful. So that's why the news last week of an expanded playoff was so important and why I think it was much needed.
That's pretty good. So I watched Ohio. So we have a disagreement. I watched Ohio State last year get pushed around by Oregon, pushed around by Michigan, and pushed around a lot. They won, but by Utah. So I am predisposed to think I want to see a physically dominant performance. I watched Notre Dame in that first half, pushing them around. I'm thinking, what's changed? You. I mean, what's changed? You were fascinated by that 10-play drive.
It was 14. 14-play drive.
10, 14.
7 minutes.
Tomato.
But the thing is, remember now, Colin, the mark of a tough team is a team that can run the football when the other team knows they have to run it. And that's exactly what they did. I think that the style in which Ohio State won that game is going to pay huge dividends for them down the road.
You know what I think the sign of a tough team is? Georgia 49, Oregon 3.
I mean, that was just dominant. That was dominant. What was Oregon? I mean, what are we doing, Dan Lanning? By the way, did you hear Kirby after the game? Kirby Smart.
Oh, he said we have better players.
He was trying to be gracious to Dan Lanning by saying, like, hey, Dan helped build this roster. But it came across as like, hey, I just want to thank Dan Lanning for recruiting these players that just beat Dan Lanning's ass. I mean, that's essentially what he said.
Okay, the Joel Klatt Show, wherever you get podcasts, new episodes Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It's great to have you back.
Thank you, buddy. It's great to be back. This is one of my favorite things. And yes, brand new podcast. I started it this week. We've got 3 episodes that are dropping this week. 2 of them are out. So go wherever you get podcasts, download it, subscribe. Love college football. Love you, the fans. And I can't wait for it.
I'm so excited. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.